The glow of the digital clock on the nightstand read 1:07 a.m. I was halfway through a dream about reorganizing my garage, a mundane, deeply satisfying dream, when my phone buzzed 3 times in quick succession on my chest. I blinked the sleep out of my eyes, my breath catching with that instant, familiar anxiety of a late-night alert. It was too late for a work email, too early for a flight delay. It was Sarah. I fumbled for the phone, the cold glass startling against my skin. The screen lit up the room, throwing shadows on the ceiling. I opened the text thread, my thumb hovering over the first message. Sarah was usually a deep sleeper and never one for middle-of-the-night contact unless there was a crisis, a leak, a sick pet, a forgotten alarm. But the messages were too long for a simple question. The first read, "I need to tell you something. Please read this and don't call. I'm not home." The second, "This is going to hurt, Liam. I know it will. But I can't keep pretending. I've been seeing Victor, my boss, for 4 months now. It started right after the Boston trip. The third, the final jagged piece of glass. I'm with him now. I'm happier than I've been in years. He sees me. He truly understands. I'm sorry, but I want a divorce. I'll have my lawyer contact you next week. Please be reasonable about the house and the assets. I just need to be free." The air went completely still. It wasn't the kind of shock that makes you yell or break things. It was a cold, precise surgical strike to the chest, severing the vital cords of 8 years of marriage. My first thought wasn't rage or sorrow. It was an odd, almost detached observation of the sheer cowardice of it. A text message, 1:07 a.m., a neat digital severance package for a shared life. I sat up, propping 2 pillows behind my back, the linen sheets suddenly rough and irritating against my skin. I read the messages again, slowly, each word a distinct metallic taste. Victor Sterling, senior partner at the firm. Mid-50s, slicked back silver hair, always wearing those expensive cufflinks. I'd met him a dozen times at company events. He'd always been overly polite, a little too solicitous of Sarah, calling her my right-hand woman with a proprietary smile that I had, like a fool, dismissed as professional flattery. I remembered the Boston trip, a 4-day conference she had claimed was grueling, where she had been too exhausted to talk when she called me, too exhausted to travel straight home, taking an extra day off. That's where it started. 4 months. 4 months of dinner, movies, and quiet nights at home, all built on a foundation of meticulously crafted lies. I didn't reply. The phone felt heavy, a brick of bad news. I didn't call. Her instruction, born of a fear of confrontation, was the first thing I would grant her. I got out of bed, the carpet cold under my bare feet. I walked to the kitchen, the soft, low hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. I poured myself a tumbler of water, drank it, and then poured a glass of single malt. I wasn't drinking for oblivion. I was drinking for clarity. I went to my home office, turned on the computer, and logged into our shared bank account. I scrutinized the recent statements, the transactions a roadmap of her betrayal. I saw the usual charges, groceries, gas, the mortgage. But then I saw the anomalies. A recurring charge for the Parker Hotel Spa in the city, twice a month for the last 4 months. A couple of high-end restaurant tabs I hadn't been on. A significant purchase at a boutique jewelry store 2 months ago, one she had never mentioned or worn. She had been funding her affair with our shared capital, the small luxuries of betrayal paid for by the life she was discarding. The sheer entitlement made my stomach turn. I logged out. I knew enough for now. Her text message wasn't a request. It was a declaration. My response wouldn't be a pleading argument or a furious tirade. It would be a calculated demolition. Sarah wanted freedom and happiness with Victor. She expected a messy, emotional fight that would end with her walking away with a sizable portion of my assets. She expected me to be the broken, supplicating husband, easy to manipulate and dispose of. She was about to be deeply disappointed. I spent the next 2 hours mapping out a different kind of war. I was a software engineer, a man whose professional life was built on logic, identifying vulnerabilities, and executing precise, unassailable code. This situation was just a system with a massive bug, Sarah, and the solution required elegant, irrefutable code. First, information security. I changed the passwords on all our shared utility accounts, the Wi-Fi router, and our streaming services. I deactivated the key fob entry to my office. More importantly, I created a hidden folder on my cloud drive and began transferring every document that mattered. Tax returns, the deed to the house, which I had owned before we married, a fact she often conveniently forgot, investment portfolios, and most crucially, the prenuptial agreement that her lawyer had practically scoffed at 8 years ago, dismissing it as old-fashioned and easily challengeable. It wasn't. It was ironclad, written by my family's firm. It was the first checkmate. Next, discretion and evidence. I needed to confirm the details of her life with Victor, their routines, their shared spaces. I needed evidence that was not just compelling but legally devastating. I opened a new private email account and began composing a list of immediate actions. I was not going to give her the satisfaction of a fight in the house. My silence was my weapon. As the sun began to paint the sky a weak, bruised purple, I walked into the garage. The car she drove, a high-end sedan I had purchased for her last birthday, was sitting in its usual spot. I opened the glove compartment, retrieved the registration and the proof of insurance, and placed them in my office safe. Then, on a hunch, I went to her purse, hanging on the coat rack near the front door. Inside, nestled beneath a tube of lipstick, was a small silver key. It wasn't the house key. It wasn't the car key. It was a security box key. I recognized the logo stamped on the head, Manhattan Secure Storage, a corporate-grade storage facility. My blood went cold again. She wasn't just planning a divorce. She was staging a departure, likely stashing expensive personal items and perhaps even my more valuable gifts. I put the key in my pocket. I wouldn't use it yet. The key was bait. I walked back upstairs and stripped the sheets off the bed. I loaded them into the washing machine, then took a long, hot shower, scrubbing away the feeling of her betrayal. I dressed in a suit, a sharp gray wool that meant business, and descended the stairs, pausing at the front door. I slipped my keys in my pocket. Her shoes were gone from the rack. Her side of the closet would be empty. She had already moved out before sending the text, ensuring a clean getaway while I slept. The audacity of it solidified my resolve. I wouldn't grant her the quick, clean divorce she desired. I wouldn't be the generous, broken ex-husband. I would be a surgical, invisible wrecking ball. Before leaving for the office, I walked to the refrigerator. I pulled out a small magnetic dry erase board we used for shared grocery lists. I erased the list and, in my neatest handwriting, wrote a single sentence, meant for her to read when she inevitably came by to collect more of her things or reason with me. The message read, "Consult the prenup. Everything else is negotiable." I took a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs. I was no longer a husband. I was an opponent. The game had changed, and she had just made the first fatal error. The drive to the office was silent, the morning commute a blur of indifferent headlights. I didn't listen to the radio or take any calls. My mind was a CPU running complex calculations, isolating variables and predicting Sarah's next moves. She would be expecting a frantic emotional text loop, perhaps a desperate phone call to her parents. She would be prepared to manage my emotional meltdown. My silence, coupled with the message on the fridge, was designed to introduce uncertainty, a software flaw in her otherwise perfect exit strategy. We arrived at my desk and immediately booked 2 appointments. One with the forensic accounting firm my family used, and another with a private investigation service specializing in corporate infidelity. I made sure both appointments were scheduled for the end of the business day, after I had established an alibi and maintained the appearance of business as usual. I needed to look unbothered, functioning, and completely in control. My first calculated move involved Victor. Since Victor was Sarah's boss, the senior partner, she had made the mistake of mixing her infidelity with her career leverage. My first priority was to destabilize Victor's position, and by extension, Sarah's. I couldn't just call HR. That would be messy and emotional. I needed an external professional catalyst. I opened my browser, navigated to a professional networking site, and began a deep dive into Victor Sterling's public profile and his firm's structure. He was widely respected, a pillar of the community, often speaking on ethical leadership and corporate governance. The hypocrisy was a rich vein of opportunity. I cross-referenced the firm's public disclosures with an anonymous tip line I knew their compliance department maintained. I also found the name of a senior associate, Eliza Vance, Victor's chief rival for the managing partnership, a woman known for her sharp ambition and ruthless attention to detail. I spent the morning compiling an anonymous, encrypted email. The content was clinical, not about the affair, but about the conflict of interest and ethical breach. It referenced the repeated Parker Hotel Spa charges that Sarah had processed on her corporate card as client entertainment, charges which, if scrutinized, would reveal a pattern of misuse of corporate funds, a firm violation of their internal ethics policy, particularly for a senior partner who was held to a higher standard. I provided just enough detail, dates, amounts, and the specific cost center she had used to warrant an immediate deep dive internal audit, all without mentioning my name or the word affair. I sent the email to 3 recipients simultaneously. The anonymous compliance tip line, the firm's external auditor, and critically, Eliza Vance. I knew Eliza wouldn't waste time. She would see this as a weapon handed to her on a silver platter, a way to sideline Victor and seize his position. She would initiate the internal review immediately, ensuring the investigation was swift and brutal. The beauty of the move was its plausible deniability. If Sarah or Victor suspected me, I could simply deny any knowledge, claiming that Victor's own financial mistakes were finally catching up with him, a common pitfall of careless executives. That afternoon, I met with the private investigator, Frank. He was a quiet, unassuming man with eyes that seemed to take inventory of the room instantly. I laid out the situation with zero emotion. I gave him the key to the Manhattan Secure Storage Unit, Victor's office address, and the Parker Hotel details. I need 3 things, Frank, I said, sliding an initial retainer check across the table. 1. Irrefutable, date-stamped photographic evidence of Sarah and Victor together in a compromising location. 2. A complete inventory of what's in that storage unit. And 3. I need you to find out if Victor is married, and if so, get me his wife's contact information. I need the full picture of the collateral damage. Frank nodded, tucking the check into his jacket. The photos are easy. The storage unit will take finesse. The wife I'll have before dawn tomorrow. You seem very composed, Liam. I'm prioritizing the exit, I replied. Emotional response is a waste of resources. I need proof of her deceit and the scope of her planning. She's demanding a financial outcome based on a lie. I need to prove the lie. Frank left and I immediately met with the forensic accountant. We spent an hour dissecting our joint accounts, my separate accounts, and the complex language of the prenuptial agreement. The accountant was clear. Because the house was premarital property and the prenup was robust, her claims would be severely limited. The Parker Hotel charges and the jewelry purchase using joint funds, however, could be legally framed as wasteful dissipation of marital assets for the purpose of an illicit affair, which would further reduce any alimony or settlement she might claim. The affair wasn't just a moral wrong. It was a financial weapon I could wield. When I got home, the dry erase board was gone from the fridge. In its place, a small typed note was taped to the counter. Liam, I came by. I expected anger. I expected yelling. I expected you to be a man and call me. Your message on the fridge is incredibly petty. I won't discuss the prenup. It's ancient and meaningless. I want a fair division. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. I am trying to be amicable. Call me. We need to talk. Sarah I crumpled the note without reading it again. Her demand for a talk was a trap, a way to engage me in an emotional conversation where she could record my anger, twist my words, and present herself as the reasonable party. I would not give her that material. Instead of calling, I executed my next move. I opened my personal investment portfolio, the large one I had inherited from my grandfather, the one she didn't know the exact value of, and liquidated 75% of the highly liquid assets. I transferred the cash into a new, separate, untraceable account under a corporate shell I had created years ago for tax purposes, an account that was explicitly listed in the prenup as separate, non-marital property. This was not illegal. It was asset protection. It was a move designed to present a much smaller marital estate to her lawyer next week, instantly killing the notion of a windfall settlement. I then went to my email and sent a single, crisp reply to her personal address, maintaining the impersonal, almost corporate tone she had set with her text. Sarah, I received your note. I declined the request for a phone call. All communication regarding the dissolution of the marriage will now be directed through my attorney. I will provide their contact information once I have retained a firm. Until then, you can use email. I stand by the initial instruction. Consult the prenup. Compliance with its terms is the fastest route to resolution. Further attempts to access or liquidate marital assets without my written consent will be flagged as hostile and constitute a violation of the agreement. Liam I hit send and leaned back in my chair. The battle was no longer about love or betrayal. It was about leverage and capital. Sarah wanted a clean escape and a big payout. I was making the escape slow, the process painful, and the payout minimal. The next morning, I awoke to a brief text from Frank. Wife's name is Eleanor. Got the number. Evidence is developing faster than expected. Check your encrypted email later tonight. It's done. The first domino had fallen. The following morning, Frank's cryptic text about the evidence accelerated my timeline from planned campaign to rapid execution. I spent the morning at work, my mind detached, answering emails with mechanical efficiency. At lunchtime, I drove to the notary's office and officially transferred ownership of my sailboat, a sizable asset I had purchased before the marriage, into a trust named after my sister's children. Again, perfectly legal under the prenup's provisions for separate property and another asset she would assume was part of the marital estate to be divided. I was systematically dismantling the financial illusion she had banked on. That evening, I logged into the encrypted email account Frank had established. The folder contained several high-resolution photos and 2 documents. The photos were devastatingly precise. The first set showed Sarah and Victor emerging from the Parker Hotel Spa's private entrance, Victor's arm casually wrapped around her waist. Their body language, the intimate, relaxed language of a long-established couple. The second set, even more impactful, showed them leaving Victor's house late one evening. In one photo, Victor was adjusting Sarah's collar. In another, they were sharing a quiet, knowing look as they got into his car. The photos were all date-stamped and legally admissible, proving a committed affair that long predated her "I'm happier" text. The documents were Eleanor's, Victor's wife's, contact information, including her private cell number, and a detailed list of the items Frank had inventoried in the Manhattan Secure Storage Unit. The list confirmed my suspicion. It was an inventory of theft. The unit contained not only all of Sarah's expensive personal clothing and jewelry, but also several items of mine, specifically a limited edition watch and a box of my grandfather's irreplaceable naval medals, which she had clearly packed in her hasty exit, intending to keep them in the settlement shuffle. The realization that she had not just been planning her freedom, but actively stealing from me, removed the last vestiges of any complicated feeling. She was simply a criminal, trading on my former affection. I needed to move immediately before Victor or Sarah realized the internal audit was brewing, or before she spoke to her lawyer, who might warn her about the prenup's strength. My final move involved the 2 people she and Victor least expected to hear from, their spouses. I called Eleanor first. I used my personal cell phone, the one she would not recognize, and kept my tone low, calm, and utterly professional. Eleanor, my name is Liam. I regret to call you this way, but I have information regarding your husband, Victor, that you need to be aware of. She was quiet for a moment, her voice sharp with apprehension. Who is this? I'm the husband of the woman Victor has been having an affair with for the past 4 months. Her name is Sarah. I have irrefutable proof, and I am currently finalizing my divorce. I wanted to give you this information privately before it becomes public in the legal filings, as I believe you deserve the truth and a head start. I listened to her intake of breath. I gave her the precise dates of the Boston trip and referenced the recurring charges at the Parker Hotel. I told her I would forward a selection of the evidence, not everything, just enough to confirm the scope of the deceit, to her private email address. I'm not doing this for revenge, Eleanor. I lied smoothly, the words like silk. I'm doing this because both of us were treated like disposable assets. Your husband's affair has financial implications for his firm, and I believe you should speak to your own lawyer immediately to protect your future. I ended the call knowing I had detonated the bomb under Victor's well-ordered life. Eleanor would be decisive. Wealthy, betrayed wives rarely hesitated to deploy legal action. Her action would ensure Victor's inevitable distraction, if not his outright termination, right before Sarah expected him to provide a comfortable, stable future. Sarah would lose both her husband and her boyfriend in the space of a week. Next, I turned my attention back to Sarah. She was scheduled to have her lawyer contact me that Monday. I decided to preempt the lawyer. I drafted a comprehensive, cold, and legally dense email attaching the evidence Frank had gathered. I sent it to her personal email, with a carbon copy to my newly retained attorney, Ms. Chen, whose contact information I had just received. The subject line was simply, dissolution of marriage and asset status. The body read, Sarah, Attached is evidence confirming your 4-month affair with Victor Sterling. I have also inventoried the contents of the Manhattan secure storage unit you rented and found several items of my personal, premarital property, including the limited edition watch and my grandfather's naval medals. This activity will be categorized as theft and will be documented in the divorce filing. You will also find the contact information for my attorney, Ms. Chen. She will be serving your counsel. And you with the initial documents next week. These documents will outline the non-negotiable terms of the prenup. Furthermore, they will contain an accounting of the wasteful dissipation of marital assets for the purpose of your affair, which will be used to offset any settlement claim you may attempt to make. Please be aware, Victor Sterling's wife, Eleanor, is now fully informed of your relationship. Given that Victor is currently under an internal audit at his firm for ethical and financial misconduct, his ability to provide you with the financial security you cited as your reason for leaving is severely compromised. You now have a choice. Proceed amicably with the terms of the prenup, which grants you a small, non-negotiable settlement, the path to a clean, quiet exit, or contest the prenup, which will result in a messy, public battle where the full extent of your affair, the theft, and Victor's professional troubles will be fully litigated. My offer of a quiet resolution is now on the table. Respond through Ms. Chen by the end of the day Monday. Any communication outside of legal channels will be ignored. Liam.I hit send. It was a digital guillotine, severing her control and destroying her perceived leverage in one swift move. I had given her exactly what she asked for, freedom, but on my terms, stripped of the financial comfort she expected. Later that evening, the phone began to buzz furiously. Sarah was not texting. She was calling repeatedly. She called 12 times in a row, then switched to my private cell. I let it ring. The panic in her persistent attempts was palpable. The fear of a person who has suddenly realized the ground beneath them is dissolving. When the calls finally stopped, a single text came through. Liam, how could you? What about the prenup? I need that unit's inventory now. You are ruining everything. Call me, I'm begging you. This is cruel. I put the phone on silent, placed it face down on the kitchen counter, and fixed myself a simple dinner. I ate slowly, savoring the silence of the house and the clean feeling of having finished a complicated, necessary job. I had not yelled, I had not begged, and I had not resorted to cheap insults. I had simply used logic and leverage to execute a perfect surgical separation. The revenge wasn't loud. It was the quiet, precise removal of the future she thought she had secured, replaced with the sudden, terrifying uncertainty of a life she hadn't planned for, standing alone amidst the professional wreckage of the man she had chosen over me.